All right, welcome back to the best version of me. I'm your host, Daniel Hernandez, along with my co-host, Edgar Miranda. Boy, do we have a treat for you today. We have an amazing special guest on our show. Edgar, go ahead and tell them who we have on the show today.
Oh man, it's a privilege to have this person on the show. When I was 19 years old, I would turn on the radio and he would come out, not knowing that fast forward, we're gonna be interviewing him. He has a story to tell. He's been on music, songs with artists. He's been on the radio for, God knows, over 2 decades at least. And not just that, he's been on top, especially here in California, here in LA. LA's party station, hip hop station, Power 106. If anything, this guy could really teach me on how to do some interviews because this guy's been interviewing mega stars. Not only that, he's also had the privilege to DJ for Selena, just to give you a little background. And I've known this guy for over 20 years, and he has a story that he might share. I think he said that we were one of the first promoters that booked him when he came out to California, which is awesome, because now we have him here on Best Version of Me. But without further ado, I want to introduce my friend and superstar radio host, DJ Felli Fel. I think I always wanted to do that. He wanted to do that. So Felli, thanks for being here, man, on such a short notice and for coming out and being with us.
Amazing introduction.
Means a lot, man.
Thank you.
I think no one does it better than you, though. Oh, because man, I had a little nervous right there, just introducing you. It's like introducing the master of the masters. No, seriously, I'm
I've never seen you this nervous.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you.
I've never seen nothing but great things to say about you.
Oh, man.
I've heard you. I know of you. Great big fan. But on a personal level, he just says, man, we got to really get him on the show. He has a story to tell. Authentic guy. We got to get him on the show.
And then wearing the LA hat, he actually took me to one of my first LA games. True story, because I really
Dodger game. Yeah.
Dodger game. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, how you never been? You ain't go to Dodger games?
Never.
Wow.
Yeah. No, yeah, man. I can't believe it's been 20 years. Yeah. It's been a long time.
What year was it that you moved out here?
2000. Well, the second time I moved out here.
Yeah, because you're originally from...
Grew up in Atlanta. My family moved out here when I was in high school. I went to Gary in Pomona. And then a few years later, we moved to Dallas. And I was in Dallas for some years before I ended up back with an opportunity at Power.
Yeah.
Which changed my life, obviously. Yeah.
So Pomona, P-Town, how was it in high school there?
You know, I don't want to date myself, but yeah, back when I was in high school, it was a different beast out in Pomona. I mean, I have fond memories. You know, I played basketball. I think my first car at the time was a '66 Bug. Oh. I met, you know, a really good friend to this day, and shout to Albert D'Alba and the D'Alba family and Elite Car Club. I have fond memories playing sports and working on cars and in the same car club to this day. Still love sports to this day. And
what kind of car you have right now?
Huh?
What kind of car you have right now?
I got a couple, but my baby is a '64 Chevelle.
Ooh.
I'm working on a '77 Chevy G10 van.
You know I own a body shop, right?
We'll talk.
Yeah. So we just did a '65 Fastback. I never knew how much I loved working on cars.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna talk.
I got a couple, and I got a Blazer, '89 Blazer, '76 or '77 Chevy Nova.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
So I dabble, but I try to do a lot of the work myself, but you know, I end up going to the homies with the stuff I can't do. Always been into cars, always loved sports, music. One of the first time I really caught a bug DJing was actually at Gary High School in Pomona. Because as you guys know, living and growing up in Southern California, a lot of the lunch breaks that we have are outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's almost like little concession stands where you go get your, chili cheese Fritos and all that. And,
Pepper.
And we used to always have a DJ in the little area where we had lunch on Fridays. And and I remember seeing those turntables, and I was like, man, those are the turntables from Yo MTV Rap. Those are what I see in the videos. And it actually may have been even right before Yo MTV Rap started, but I remember seeing those turntables, the Technics 1200s in the videos, and I just would sit there and watch. And then I befriended this dude, and then had an opportunity to DJ in the little lunch area. So that was actually my first time ever DJing, in front of people. Besides little house parties, that I had done here and there. So that was it. That was where it kind of started.
How was it when you were behind those coffins and those turntables in front of the people that you go to school with? Were they feeling it? Were they not feeling it?
Yeah,
where were you at with that?
Nervous as hell.
Nervous as hell.
It's kind of like me right now, nervous as hell.
I think one of the first records that I had and I played was Rodney and Joe Cooley, Everlasting Bass.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yep. And then I think it was like Boys in the Hood, Eazy-E. I think that had just came out. I'm dating myself crazy right now. But yeah, those were, An Egyptian Lover and Debbie Deb, Lookout Weekend. Those were some of the songs that I remember playing, for the first time. So.
And then from there, how did that passion continue on from DJing there at your high school?
So we, not too long after that, moved. My stepdad's job moved to Dallas, Texas. And I found myself, DJing in my bedroom. I think I was using one of my mom's I basically took a turntable out of our house and made it into my little DJ turntable. And I had a little realistic mixer from Radio Shack, and that's how it started. And
did you go by the name DJ Felli Fel?
No, I was just Jay, because everybody called my name's James. So everybody, my nickname was Jay. I didn't have a DJ name. Nobody called me James back in the day, and I wasn't Felli Fel. I was just I was what everybody called me on the baseball field, on the basketball court. It was just Jay. Nobody, it was when I was doing little house parties, and I didn't even have a setup. I had like buddies that they had the turntables at first, and we would do house parties. And I would slowly, collect records and, work odd jobs to I'd spend the whole check on going to the record store. I mean, any DJ out there that has a passion for DJing knows what I mean. I mean, it was buying records over caps and sneakers. That came last. I'd have some dirty sneakers, but I'd have the newest
records.
Yeah, the newest records.
Now, were you part of any crew at that time when you were out doing your parties and things like that?
Yeah. So, well, yes and no. I had a DJ partner, and his name was Sean, aka Tall Boy, and everybody thought we were brothers because we looked so much alike. And back in the day, we would do parties, and he'd get on the mic, and I'd be on the turntables, and then we'd switch out, and he'd be on the turntables, and I'd be on the mic, and we would we'd rap, and we formed a little group, and that was some really fun times. Unfortunately, he ended up being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he did some time, 13 years to be exact. And it kind of put a wrench in that, and it broke my heart at the same time because we had been.
How old were you at this point?
I was probably 19, going on 20, and so I was trying to figure things out, and I was trying to stay out of trouble, and thank God for the most part I did, and. I think one of my big breaks came. So we used to rent out the little party room at the apartment complex, right?
A little clubhouse.
His little clubhouse and the apartments that he lived in with his parents, and I say we rented it out. I think we just broke in that bad boy. We'd throw parties, and I think we charged like $5. You know, we'd have the jungle juice. You know,
The
Jungle juice, Jello shots, all that was
you just bring a cup. You know, and $5. But we would throw these little parties, and somehow, dude by the name of Carlos, and I can't remember I think his last name was Garcia. And again, this is in Dallas. He randomly somehow, I don't know how we knew him. He was at the party and he approached me one day and he goes, "Man, you know, you're a dope DJ." He goes, "You know, would you ever want to DJ at a club?" And I'm 19 years old and I'm just like, I'm only 19. And he was like, "Don't worry, I'm going to introduce you to somebody." You know, long story short, he brings me to a club near downtown Dallas. It was a club called the Hakata Club.
The what?
Hakata Club.
Hakata Club.
And I think it's a slang in Spanish, like party, mas party. You know, it was like, I don't know exactly what it meant, but something like that. But it was Jakara. And it was Salsa Merengue Club. And I remember he's like, "Yeah, they need a DJ that can play, you know, English music." Takes me there. He said, "Just do your thing. And the owner wants to see you DJ." And the next thing you know, they offered me a job Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think it was like $75 a night to play the English music.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of started. I knew a little bit about Spanish music here and there, but that's where I started learning, you know, more. And that club ended up, you know, going, you know, it had its time.
And this was during the time when you would get the crates and the vinyl, right?
Yeah, I think I only had I might have had 3 crates of records at this point, maybe 4. And then the club had a lot of records, you know.
For the young kids, tell them what the crates are, because I remember the DJs carrying the crates.
Carrying the crates.
Man, you know, that was back in the day where, you know, you put in work before and after, you know. You know, it was exciting when you were heading there with the crates, but then after the party was over and you're like, I gotta take these crates home. But yeah, we would load up these milk crates full of records, and yeah, we had the big ones, the small ones, everything in between, and but that club led to another club called Escapades. That's when I met a good friend of mine by the name of Mowdy, and Mowdy really introduced me to, you know, the Tejano music, the Spanish, you know, all the Spanish stuff that if I didn't already know it, he introduced it to me. And then I got an opportunity to DJ at more of a hip hop type Latin club, and I brought my boy Mowdy over there with me. I'm like, "Man, you know, they need you over here," because they were doing the same thing. It was like a mix of Spanish, you know, and hip hop, and it was a bigger club. It was a little more well known, and then that club, the owners opened up a bigger club called Zaps, and Zaps just, you know, it was the biggest Latin club in the city.
This is in Dallas.
In Dallas. And you know, they would bring huge artists. You know, Thursday nights usually was the night they would bring in artists. But yeah, that's where I learned a lot of the Spanish music, and I had the opportunity to, you know, play a lot of the house, Latin hip hop, freestyle, of course, all the commercial, you know, rap music. So I kind of got into that, and while I was doing all that, I was learning how to produce hip hop. I think at 17, it was the first time I touched a drum machine. A kid I know had this SP1200 drum machine. He didn't want it, and he basically gave it to me.
Wow.
And he ended up moving away, and he's like, "You could just keep it." So I ended up learning this SP1200 drum machine, and I was producing a lot of music for a lot of hip hop artists in Dallas, just on the low. You know, somebody would give me, you know, $100 and be like, "Give me a beat." And at the same time, I started doing mixtapes. These were when mixtapes were on cassettes.
Yeah.
And man, I'd make, you know, a couple bucks selling those tapes at the clubs, and people would come up, and, you know, if you had money, you were doing your thing, if you know what I mean. They'd say, "Hey, record whatever you do tonight at the club, record it, and I'll pay you $100. And I got smart at one point and realized I can record what I do at the club, take that tape home, make copies of it, and then, come back and sell. And that's how I kind of, and this was back in, this was probably in 1991, when mixtapes were really tapes. They weren't big CDs.
Yeah.
But it was, man, I have a lot of fond memories. I was very blessed to have those opportunities. And that was, and then, that led to another club. And then before you know it, I had an opportunity to be on the radio, on a community radio station. And I'm trying to remember how that happened. One of the memories I have with getting on the radio was there was a guy by the name of Alan Hammer, and he was the host of actually one of the clubs that I DJ'd at, Rhythm Nation. And he used to host a Saturday night show on this community radio station. So it was a small station, but it was an FM station, and it had a big, 50,000 watt frequency. So it competed with, the big stations in the market as far as the signal. And he had this Saturday night show, and I remember he invited me up to DJ, and that led to me, DJing there on a regular basis on the air. He would host, I would DJ. And I remember one night he called me and he goes, "Hey, I'm running late. Can you start the show?" And I'm like, "Oh shit." I was always over on the turntables. I didn't know how to run, all the equipment.
Yeah.
And but I told him, "Yeah, you're gonna have to walk me through it." And so he walked me through it. I started the show, and that was where I think I got my first experience of DJing and being on the air. And to this day, people ask me, they're like, "When we hear you on the air, we're on the turntables a lot of those times we hear you. How do you do it on the mic and the turntables at the same time?" And I attribute that to being kind of thrown in, to it. Yeah, I had to figure out, like, how do I get behind these turntables and run this board? And I just kind of was thrown into it. And so to this day, it's like riding a bike for me to get behind turntables and crack the mic, and it's really easy. And
Do you have one that you prefer more than the other, rather doing the DJing or on the mic?
I love being on the air behind the turntables because I'm in control of the music and the vibe, and and it's fun for me. After all these years, I still get a high off of DJing and being on the air or being at a club.
Yeah,
That's awesome. How'd you come up with how'd you get the name Felli Fel?
Ah, man, we'll be here a long time if I tell you the whole story, but I used to enter some DJ contests, and I entered this one contest, and I didn't have a DJ name. I was just DJ J, and there was a dude on the front row that was yell when each DJ would come up. You have 5 minutes to do your little DJ routine, and you get off stage. And there was a dude on the front, and I remember he was yelling every time a DJ would come up. He was yelling stuff, and I was nervous. I hadn't gone on yet, so I wasn't really paying attention to him. But I got up, did my set, got off stage, and my buddies were like, "You're bad like a felony, you're bad like a felony." And I'm like, "What the fuck are y'all talking about?" He was like, "That crazy dude on the front row was saying that when you were DJing." and I was like, "Whatever." And ever since that day, and I didn't win or anything, but it was, nevertheless, I got in the contest. And I have a lot of respect for DJs who do battle DJing, because it's nerve-wracking and all eyes are on you. And I did okay, but that's not the type of DJ that I was or am. But that experience kind of was a big deal for me, and they knew it. And ever since that DJ battle, they would say like, "Oh, you're bad like a felony." And then one day when you get somebody say, "Oh, that's my boy Felony, DJ Felony," and I hated that name because it was synonymous with things that I was trying to get away from. And having some buddies who went away for a while, I just didn't feel comfortable with it. But you know how it is when the homies find out you don't like a certain name, that's what they're gonna call you.
More so.
"Oh, you don't like being Little Fat Man? Well, now you're Little Fat Man."
Yeah.
And so I became DJ Felony. When I started having when my name became a little bit bigger, you got those homies that want to show people that I don't call him Felony. You know him as Felony. I call him Fel. Or Felly.
Yeah.
And so my buddies would, my close homies would call me Fel or Felly. And that's how that name, and I actually liked that name more, and I kind of just slowly I'm Felly. I dropped the Felony name slowly.
Well, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Felli Fel, yeah. Felony.
Yeah.
Now,
Crazy.
When'd you get that phone call from Power? Because I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 19 years old, roughly around that time, and this new cat is coming on Power, and Power is like the biggest thing back there. I mean, you didn't have series and none of that.
Or YouTube,
none of that.
Yeah,
it was Power. We lived for Power.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I knew about Power 106, by being out here in LA. And when I was in LA in high school, it was more K-Day. But
K-Day,
Power,
that's right. Yeah.
Power became so big, you knew about Power 106, even if you didn't live in LA, especially if you were a DJ.
Yeah.
And I followed music and radio, so of course I knew about Power. And but I had gone on to do, from that community radio station, I went on to do a Spanish station. I got a call one day from a lady by the name of Sammy Gonzalez, and she offered me a job at this Spanish station, and I was like, my Spanish isn't good enough. And she said, well,
¿Lo entiendes?
I mean, I get by.
Poquito?
Yeah, I could, I read Spanish, ironically, better than I speak it. And, but I thought I was going to have to do like interviews and, all this stuff. And she was like, no, can you at least introduce the songs? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can introduce the songs. And she goes, that's all you need. And I had learned how to mix Spanish music. I was one of the first DJs. There was a guy by the name of Steve Chavez, who I'm still friends with to this day.
And that's challenging on the Spanish side to mix in that.
So yeah, remember in hip hop, you'd have two of the same record and you go back and forth, cruising down the street, cruising down the street, cruising down the street. Well, we would do that with the Spanish. We get two of the same, records or CDs, and and I just perfected that. And so a lot of people in that Latin, that Spanish, Tejano music scene knew me for doing that, and they liked that I could play the English music too. Well, Sammy Gonzalez knew that I did that, and she wanted me to do that type of mix on the air with the Spanish music, and she gave me my own show, and it was the first time I got a real check, for being on a radio station, because the station before that was a community station, and I was nervous, but it ended up working out, and my ratings surprisingly, were good, and I did that for a minute, and then I got a call from the big hip hop station in Dallas, which is still the big, kind of Power 106 of Dallas, which is KKDA K104. I got a call from a buddy that worked up there, and he was like, hey, they want to meet with you to offer you a job. Long story short.
And how old were you around here?
I think I was about 25. 25. At that point, and I needed this job because I just had my son, and I was struggling, and I was making DJ money, and I had my hustles going on, but I needed this job, and and it was a very prestigious job to have this job on K104. And hip hop was always my true love, and so I found myself with this opportunity on K104. And I remember all the homies were like, "What the fuck, bro? You're on K104? That's crazy!" And it was just
at this point, are you DJ Felli Fel?
At this point, I'm DJ Felli Fel. At this point, I'm DJ Felony.
Still
going on Felli Fel. The radio thing actually also helped me to kind of, I can't use this name on air. Yeah. I felt like it wasn't a positive. It wasn't a friendly name, and I didn't want to be judged on, and I was constantly asked, like, why Felony? Why Felony? And when you grow up and you see people go through certain things and you go through certain things, you're trying to get away from those negative connotation, or whatever the term is. And I just didn't, when you're younger, I think it's a little different because you're like, you try to be, you're growing up, you're trying to be gangster, you're trying to be hard. And, I wanted to get away from that. And radio it was a friendlier name for radio, being Felli, and I just slowly. But yeah, when I was on K104, I was DJ Felony, and it kind of transitioned into Felli. And then I got years later, after being on K104, I was visiting out here in Los Angeles, and I was shopping my music. I came out here just to set up meetings with A&R cats from record labels, and they got an opportunity to stay here. I can tell you that's another long story. Rest in peace, my buddy BVOM. Prayers to his family. He recently passed, but he was a buddy of mine that he knew I was coming to LA. He was in the record industry, and he called me. He said, "Hey, I know you're out here in LA doing meetings with labels. You want to play some basketball? I know you play ball. We're gonna play at DJ Quick's house in the Valley." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck yeah." And so he comes the next day, picks me up at the hotel I was staying at, I think in Hollywood. And he said, "I got to make a stop at a radio station, Power 106. And I'm like, "Oh, cool." We get there. He says, "Come up with me." He goes in this guy's office, and I'm standing in the hallway, and I'm kind of looking like, I know this guy that he's with. They come out, and the guy introduced himself. "Hey, Felli, DJ E-Man. I met you in Miami a couple years ago at a music conference back in like '97. And I'm like, oh, I immediately remembered, because he told me the party that we were at when we met. It was a Loud Records music party. Remember Loud Records, the hip hop label? Shout to Steve Rifkin. So he said, "Yeah, man, how are you?" And he starts asking me about Dallas, and he's like, "I hear you're doing big things." And he goes, "Hey, do you have a minute? I want you to meet my boss. We're looking for a DJ." Long story short, met his boss. They asked me for a demo tape, an air check tape, and I was like, "I'm not out here for radio." So I went back home, made them a tape, sent it, didn't really hear back. And my girlfriend at the time, she saw that it bothered me, because I was like, "Man, what do I wasn't asking for this, but now that you guys are giving me the opportunity, what is it that I didn't have? Why would?" So it bugged me, and about a month later, I get a call, and it was Jimmy Steele from Power, and he says, "Hey, I'm sorry, I went on a second honeymoon with my wife, and I just barely got back, and your tape's on my desk." And he's like, "Big Boy heard it, and some of the other, and he's like, we really." So in props to Big Boy, he was apparently very influential in, telling them like, this guy's sounds good, but that's how it started for Power, and they offered me a job, and I ended up coming back to Los Angeles.
You had the evening spot when you first got here, 7 p.m.
Yeah, I was 7 to midnight.
See, I remember.
I was 7 to midnight. Yeah. Sun Doobie was doing nights.
You were actually my favorite.
Oh, thank you.
You're my favorite, yeah. Because when you got here, you were the new cat, and you were also my favorite because, we were all in high school listening to.
Those are fond fond memories.
Fond memories, yeah. And then you were also one that was closest to our age, versus all the other cats that were on there.
Older, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just hit the ground running, man. I was, I had Southern roots. I also had a vibe for LA, being that I had gone to high school out here, and I just, Dallas is kind of like a mini LA, So when I moved to Dallas, it was kind of like a mix of Atlanta and Los Angeles, because it had an urban scene, but it also had a Latin scene. And so it really kind of fit for me. I think that Power was looking for somebody who had a Latin vibe, but an urban edge. And I think, that's kind of who I was and still am.
Yeah.
And just how I grew up, what I was around growing up, and just what I took in, and made me who I was. And of course, seeing what people like the Baker Boys were doing, I was, obviously watching TV and would see, listening to music, and I would see people like Kid Capri, which was a DJ from New York who was always on the mic when he was DJing, and I'm like, man, that's, I wanted to learn that. And so I had a lot of influences, and I owe a lot to a lot of people who were doing it before me and at the same time as me. I've always taken it in. I always try to take a little bit from this and from that, and I've learned so much from just watching other people, whether it be Big Boy, whether it be stuff I saw in Dallas with different DJs out there, from the Rincon brothers to Greg Street was a big DJ in Dallas. I mean, learning things on the mic and learning things DJ. I mean, it was just so many people that we'd be here all day if I shouted out everybody who's been an influence on me. There's too many.
And you feel like that raised your gift, being around other people who are great as well? Absolutely.
I think you can have a talent, but when you pay attention and you want to learn, I've always tried to be the dumbest person in the room, and it's not very hard for me to do that. But I'm okay with asking questions and not knowing something, because the only way you're going to learn.
That's powerful you're saying that, though, because you would come into a room with a glass empty, and if the glass is full, what are you going to learn? It's full.
You know it all, yeah.
So the fact that you would come in there humble enough to say, hey, I'm here to learn, I'm the dumbest one in the room, then you had everything to learn.
That's right.
Yes.
And that's what I remember about you. You always perfected the art. You always perfected the art. You were always serious about your business, about your music.
I was the guy who came in there and I wanted to make sure the turntables were right and the funny thing that you bring that up is, like, I think over the years, if you didn't get to know me, I think it would come across as like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why is he, and I had to learn. And I thought, that people knew, like, oh, this is great. He wants to make sure he's doing the best job he can for us. Because if a promoter hires you as a DJ, you're only as good as your equipment. You're only as good as your instrument. Like, you see people that play musical instruments, they're polishing and oiling their trumpet and making sure everything's right. If you give somebody a trumpet that's all bent and broken, you can't expect them, if you hired them to play the trumpet, to do a really good job. And it's the same way with DJing. And I guess I just thought, like, people would appreciate that, but a lot of times it was, I'd have some of my buddies like Juan Franco, like, dang man, they said you were like kind of like, picky and this and that. I'm like, well, yeah, you're paying me to do a job.
Now that you're sharing that, because I'm also coming from the promotion side, and I'm one of those guys that.
Well, you and John Pena were some of the first to book me.
But we were also that guy that you were at the clubhouse, wanting just to get paid. We probably didn't think about the equipment. Now that we're having this conversation 20 years later, looking back, totally appreciate what you were doing. Totally appreciate it, because you're absolutely right. Like, this is your profession. This is your art. You want to have, and
my delivery, in your defense, wasn't as good back then. I probably came, because I wanted to do such a good job. I probably came across abrasive a lot of times, because I knew that I'm going to be in the spotlight. It's going to be on me. If the music isn't right, and if my equipment's not right, all of a sudden it's my fault that things don't sound right. And I never wanted to be put in those situations. And one of my biggest pet peeves was going somewhere to DJ, and still is to this day, and they don't have the equipment right.
So if you're watching this, make sure you have the equipment right, because I've been that guy.
But as you develop, as I think I did over the years, you realize how to, I can DJ on any setup, and I've gotten through some pretty tough situations, as most professional DJs have. But you want to be able to go in there and kind of do it with your eyes closed. And if your equipment's right and everything's what you asked for, you can do that and you can shine. And then somebody like you as a promoter says, we want Felli was awesome, we want to bring it back. But anyway, I still have as much fun DJing now as I did when I was
And you still look the
16
same.
years old.
You still look the same. From when we first booked it.
Apple cider vinegar, bro. Apple cider vinegar.
That's it. That's
turmeric
the secret sauce.
Turmeric.
Look, 'cause I have flyers of
Flaxseed.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm blessed to still be doing it, man. You know, I've had just an amazing run with Power, and I've had, you know, an amazing run as a DJ, and you know, I wake up every day and I'm thankful I'm able to, you know, still do this. You know, I mean, I've been able to pretty much my whole life make money doing something, you know. I've been able to take care of my family doing something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So it's been
During the intro, you mentioned DJing for Selena.
So yeah, not DJ for Selena, but I had the opportunity to DJ at events that she would perform at different places, and I would, you know, open up for her, and got to see her up close and personal. I mean, danced on the dance floor while she's, you know, in an intimate club setting on stage, and you know, as you guys know, Texas was her home, and
right.
so she was, you know, constantly at all, you know, these venues that I was DJing at, you know, and I think at the time, you know, we all knew just how amazing she was, but if I could rewind, oh man, dude. I was that guy that never wanted to ask for a photo. I never wanted to be the dude that was like, you know, and I wish that I had done that, because, you know, I mean, I remember today where I was when I found out that she had passed.
Yeah.
And you know, I was at my buddy Norby's house and his studio, and we just couldn't believe it. But that was a huge, you know, that was pretty dope that I can look back and say that I was a part of those events.
Yeah,
So.
and you've been a part of many great artists too.
Mm-hmm.
Artists that are going to live on forever. You're part of them.
That's right.
Not only interviewing them, but also having them part of the music that you've produced.
Mm-hmm.
Any of them that you care to share? Because I got my list.
You know, I'll tell you, the first opportunity that I had to do something with a big artist was with Tyrese. I did a remix to a song. I think it was called "I Like Them Girls," and I did a little remix, and the label picked it up and they put it out. I was even rapping on it. I'm like, I look back on that, I'm like, what the hell was I doing?
I like this.
I was living my dream. Yeah. I was living my best life. And then I went on to do a remix for Tupac and the Outlaws, a song called Worldwide. And I think the next thing I remember was I did a song with Fat Joe and the Loonies. And that kind of got my feet wet. And all of a sudden I had an opportunity to do a record with P. Diddy and Luda and Lil Jon and Akon. And that Get Buck in Here song really put me on the map as a producer. Yeah. And it took me around the world. I found myself, you know, God bless Akon and the homies that were on that song, because they gave me a hit record. You know, I did a beat, and I orchestrated it, so to speak, but those artists, you know, first of all, they didn't have to do that for me. Yeah. But they did, and you know, I look back on it and I'm just like, I'll never forget when I first played that song for Akon, and he jumped on the hook, he wrote the hook, and I remember when I first heard it, I'm like, yo, this shit is crazy. And Akon knew it too. He was like, you got one, boy. And I sure did. And you know, it took me around the world. I went on to do records with Kanye and Neo and Wiz and Ty Dolla $ign and Pitbull. Did a lot of songs with Pitbull. And just very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and be prepared for that opportunity. Yeah. It was a long time coming.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's what they call luck. So when I tell people like I'm very lucky, people say, nah, man, it wasn't luck, but it really is, because I think luck is exactly that. It's being at the right place at the right time and being prepared for that opportunity.
My mentor says luck, labor upon correct knowledge. When proper preparation, all those years that you were in Dallas meets opportunity, luck.
Yes.
And I think that's
Spell that out again.
luck, labor upon correct knowledge. When proper preparation meets opportunity, that's luck.
I gotta remember that.
And you're a perfect example why you're on our channel, because best version of me. The fact that you perfected your art to 20 years, and there's all these young cats that could do magic, and I see it on the soccer videos. I see these soccer videos on YouTube, and I played soccer. I had the privilege to play in my youth with Landon Donovan, but he perfected the art while I was out there promoting nightclubs. And when I thought about, okay, in the entertainment industry, who's the person that has really perfected the art and up until this point is still relevant and still making big moves? And we looked at each other and we said, DJ Felli Fel.
Felli Fel, yeah.
Felli Fel.
Thank you.
And I said, he's a friend of mine. Let's get him on there. And the fact that you were just open to be on here means a lot to me. I'm very blessed and privileged, and really I'm really humbled.
Bro, it's you know what it is, man. It's my pleasure, and and every time I tell my story, I find myself, remembering things and that I didn't remember about the story because it's been such a long time coming. But it's my pleasure, bro. Like for me to still be able to do this is just, man. Like I said, I wake up every day and I'm like, man, it's pretty cool.
Surreal.
It is, and I hope to be, doing this as long as I can, man. I get that question a lot too, like, how much longer are you gonna do this? And I say, well, am I supposed to not do something that I'm passionate about and I still love, and let's not forget pays my bills?
Oh yeah.
Because honestly, I don't know what I would do without music.
And it kind of got scary during this whole COVID pandemic.
It did.
It got scary for me in my business. It was like,
I remember we talked.
We talked for at least 2-3 hours.
Yeah. You were telling me about your stuff, and I was telling you about mine, and because that's what homies do. And I just remember telling you, and you said the same. Like, yo, I got you. You've always been a very real humble dude, and I appreciate that about you. And yeah, man, I look forward to, what the future holds, man, for all of us, man. Whether it be myself, Big Boy, you, John Pena, our boy Juan Franco, like, we still got a lot of stuff to do, man.
Oh yeah.
We just getting started, right?
Just getting started.